What role does religion and ethnicity play in national identity?
What we have to understand is that when we talk about national identity, it's not only the state that is neutral. Quite often the state or the nation, the national identity or national values even, reflects the values, the identity of the majority. And it's actually quite common, but sometimes there's a risk to that. So when you're talking about states that have an official language or an official religion, what does that really mean? It means the national identity is connected to the majority, usually the majority's language or culture or even religion. Now, that by itself is not a problem. In fact, it's quite natural. It happens in most countries. However, sometimes the nationalism behind national identity in a state can go too far and violate human rights because it's discriminatory, or in fact it restricts in ways that are unacceptable freedom of religion or other fundamental human rights. So very often we have to be careful. National identity, yes, it's a natural aspect of most states today where they reflect the majority, directly or indirectly by the way, where a state reflects the majority's religion, values, culture, or language. But sometimes it really goes way too far and it imposes and in fact restricts other people's religion, culture, or language in ways that are considered inappropriate, unacceptable in international human rights law. And this is a kind of balance which is not, does not always exist in many parts of the world, in many countries, unfortunately.
Do you think this has any implication on right to citizenship?
It does, in the sense that what we've seen throughout history, especially when there's been a great deal of strong nationalism. We've seen in history, we could go back to before the Second World War, where the government says the nation has to be protected, defended. And quite often what happens is that a certain minority is deemed to be a foreigner, an outsider, even a threat perhaps. And what has happened historically is that ethnic or certain ethnic or religious minorities are deemed not to belong to the political community, to the state. And this is when you have situations such as in Nazi Germany, when Jews were actually portrayed as dangerous or alien and therefore denied citizenship. And we've been seeing that, in fact, in recent years, that certain ethnic or religious minorities, such as, well, Muslims in Assam, or the Rohingyas in Myanmar, deemed not to be deserving citizens or denied their citizenship. So yeah, you have situations where you have a context or requirements that can be deemed to be discriminatory because they actually intentionally exclude certain ethnic or religious minorities.
But I assume that the situation in India and Myanmar is not comparable to Nazi Germany. So why would you make that comparison?
Absolutely. I mean, clearly the situation in Nazi Germany is completely different from what's happening in India and Myanmar. But you do have certain similarities in the sense that you have a particular minority that is targeted, demonized, and also denied citizenship. That also is happening in India and in Myanmar. And the similarity is especially that once you do that, you demonize, you exclude, you describe others as dangerous, it's easier for atrocities to be committed. You have one group of people who are not equal, and therefore if there are atrocities that come up, or even describing them as a threat, it's much easier to have situations of mass violations of human rights, of actually killings in the end, and other atrocities, and eventually it could lead to incitement to hate, to violence, and even calls to genocide. And by the way, we have seen calls to genocide in both Myanmar and India. So even though the situations are completely different, at the same time, they actually share similarities that are warning signs for all of us.